Time, is that working? Can you hear?
Yeah.
Still can't hear?
You hear it?
No.
I think it's pretty good. Yeah, we can.
Took a while. There we go. Okay, now it's time to start the meeting with a roll call, please.
Commissioner Patton.
Here?
Commissioner Barwick.
Here?
Commissioner Webb.
Here.
Commissioner Stecklin.
Here.
Mayor Absher.
Here, if you'd all join me by standing and giving the Pledge of Allegiance. Okay, item number 3 on the agenda is our section for public comments or audience to visitors. This is the opportunity for anybody who'd like to address the council to do so at the podium, subject to Ordinance 3128, which is up on the front desk here, which is our ordinance that governs this part of the meeting. So is there anybody who'd like to speak to the council tonight? Okay, second call. All right, we'll move on to item 4, the consent agenda. Gentlemen, item A, 6 through 8, we're going to remove from the consent agenda Commissioner Patton's request, which would leave the remainder of A, and then B through G. Are there any other items that you guys would like to vote on separately? And again, we can ask any questions about any one of these items before we vote, but do you want them voted on separately? Anybody from the audience want any additional items from the consent agenda voted on separately, A through G? Okay, is there a motion to accept the consent agenda as presented with the exceptions of items A, 6 through 8?
I would make that motion that we accept the consent agenda with the exception of 6, 7, and 8.
Second that motion.
Okay, anybody have any questions or general discussion on any of these items? Okay, roll call, please.
Commissioner Patton.
Yay.
Commissioner Barwick.
Yay.
Commissioner Webb.
Yay.
Commissioner Stecklin.
Yay.
Mayor Absher.
Yay. Chief Fitz, you're up.
Usually when I'm up here, I'm asking you for something or having to answer a question that I get a lot of blank stares about, but this I'm going to enjoy. The Marion Police Department hasn't recognized an officer or dispatcher of the year in a few years, and Assistant Chief Morrow and I decided that it was time to bring that back, so we did, and that's what I am doing tonight, recognizing 2 of our best, and I'm very happy to do this. So for our 2019 Marion Police Department Dispatcher of the Year, this person was appointed or promoted to a team lead in May. She has done the scheduling or helped with the scheduling at the very least for the past 3 years. She created a schedule mainly by herself to help reduce dispatch overtime. She trains and mentors new dispatchers. She constantly volunteers to do special projects or work that would be overtime, but she doesn't claim overtime for. She helped develop a communications training officer program. She regularly cooks and feeds whoever is on duty at the time. You can't overlook something like that. And as much as anything for me, she genuinely cares about what she does and who she is with. So for me coming in as a brand new chief, she was very, very helpful to me, made my job much easier. So the 2019 Dispatcher of the Year is Ashley Olson. So for anybody that doesn't know, in the first responder community, all of the different parts are depicted by a different color. So police is blue, fire is red, EMS is orange, and dispatch communications is yellow. I really had a hard time finding any kind of award that had yellow in it, but luckily I found it. So this plaque says, the 2019 Marion Dispatcher of the Year awarded to Ashley Olson in recognition of your outstanding contribution to emergency communications. Thank you so much. Don't go anywhere yet, okay? Now for the, next is the Officer of the Year. And I do want to say that even though these two were the ones selected, they aren't the only ones that did a great job this year. Many, many of our dispatchers and officers worked hard, tirelessly, and did a fantastic job. And what may make this more special to these two than anything else is I didn't vote, Assistant Chief Morrow didn't vote. They were voted on strictly by their peers. And to me, that really means something. So I hope they take that for what that means. Okay, so the 2019 Officer of the Year for this year handled 946 calls for service. He had 227 arrests, 130 incident reports, made 33 warrant arrests, 22 driving while license suspended or revoked arrests, a minimum of 7 meth arrests. We couldn't quite get all those stats right, and many, many more other things. He is a midnight shift officer, and for anybody that hasn't worked midnight shift, it's very taxing, very tiring, and rough on family life as well. And he does this job professionally, expertly, and without complaining ever. So it is my pleasure to present the 2019 Officer of the Year Award to Jared Gott. Should have had this out ready, shouldn't I?
It's your show.
It's my show, yours living in it, sir? I don't think so. Here's the blue award. And this says Officer of the Year Award 2019 presented to Jared Gott in recognition of your outstanding contribution to the criminal justice system and to the Marion Police Department and myself and Chief Morrow. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Need a picture over here. Need a picture. Hey, Chief.
Yes.
The wife wants a photo.
Okay. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm glad he brought that back. That's cool. Okay, item number 6, Economic Development Municipal Planning. I think most of this we'll have Glenn on standby here just in case we've got some questions, but it's all in our packet. We got a vacating an alley is the first order of business on item 6A. I guess I'll ask if you guys have any questions of Glenn at this point, or do you want to ask him something? Okay, if not, could we entertain a motion?
I'd make a motion to approve ordinance 3589, which is vacating an alley located between Cornell Avenue and Kennedy Avenue that intersects with Princeton Avenue near a little tractor and equipment. This is at the request of Justin Farrell and James Parker.
I would second that.
Okay, any questions? General discussion? Okay, roll call, please.
Commissioner Patton,
Yay.
Commissioner Barwick,
Yay.
Commissioner Webb,
Yay.
Commissioner Steckland,
Yay.
Mayor Absher.
Yay. Chris, we'll do yours after B, C, and D on item 6. I should have done yours right immediately after, but I forgot. Okay, item B is the next step in the residential TIF process, which is establishing the final public hearing date as proposed. And we'll need a motion on item 6B as well.
Making a motion to approve ordinance 3587, establishing February 10th, 2020 at 5 PM as the final public hearing date for the proposed residential TIF 1.
I second that motion.
Any discussion? Okay, roll call, please.
Commissioner Patton.
Yay?
Commissioner Barwick.
Yay?
Commissioner Webb.
Yay.
Commissioner Steckland.
Yay.
Mayor Absher.
Yay. Item 6, Charlie, is a inducement agreement with Crown Brew. We had this on a previous meeting, and then they had some changing of their names, so we had to postpone that until we had this correct naming.
I'd make a motion to approve ordinance 3588, entering into a sales tax inducement agreement with Crown Brew LLC.
I'll second that.
Any questions on this item? Okay, roll call, please.
Commissioner Patton.
Yay?
Commissioner Barwick.
Yay?
Commissioner Webb.
Yay.
Commissioner Steckland.
Yay.
Mayor Absher.
Yay. Item 6, Delta, discuss, this, we had a similar one last meeting. This is sort of a pre-agreement, if you think of it that way, for developers that have approached us interested in the residential TIF, should that ultimately be enacted, so that we have another inducement resolution, not an ordinance, just a resolve, we're resolved to do that. Item 6D.
You need a motion on that?
Yes.
Okay, I'll make a motion to adopt resolution 19-23, an inducement resolution between the City of Marion and Enrico Castellano for properties located in the proposed residential TIF.
Second that.
Any discussion on this item? Okay, roll call, please. Bless you.
Commissioner Patton.
Yay.
Commissioner Barwick.
Yay?
Commissioner Webb.
Yay.
Commissioner Steckland.
Yay.
Mayor Absher.
Yay. All right, now we'll go backwards. Chris? You had 3 personnel moves.
Yes.
All of these were personnel moves that Commissioner Patton asked for clarification just to remove
Yeah.
from the consent agenda. And so these are 6, 7, and 8. So if you
Yeah.
just want to
Sure.
talk about 6, and then we'll,
Okay.
Let-
Items 6, 7, and 8 I see as a bit of a package. It's, of course, you can elect to look at them individually, but in every other situation, for instance, the fitness and the sports and rec coordinator positions, when we consolidated that, we also had 2 manager positions. What we found throughout the hub is we're effectively leading the groups in each department with leads and managers. So that's what this represents. We have item 6, my recommendation to consolidate the youth programming and development coordinator position with the membership coordinator position. Alexis Williams, who's here, would be assuming that position if approved. She's currently the youth programming and development coordinator, and it would be a consolidation of those two positions with managers in each of those departments in membership, as well as youth programming and development manager. So membership manager, in essence, an office manager that would be an assist, as well as youth manager that would assist with after-school child watch and summer camp programs in that department. So we've found that it's effectively working in other areas. We started with leads and managers within aquatics. We're doing the same with sports and rec and fitness, and that's what this consolidation would represent. So my recommendation is to consolidate those 2 coordinator positions, led by Alexis Williams, for those 2 positions at $48,000 annually plus benefits. We'd also be saving, she's currently at 38, we'd be saving a benefit package by not hiring an additional membership coordinator. So that's the proposal of the first one. Items 7 and 8 are the lead positions. Lead position for membership manager would be assumed by Ashley Palmer, who's currently full-time lead lead front desk attendant that's currently with us in that full-time position. The other position would be posted and interviewed for internally and externally. So those are and that position's item 8, the manager within the youth programming and development department.
Do we have a timeline on that one, Chris, number 8?
We would like to, we'd like to post it immediately. We do have 1 or 2 internal candidates, I believe, but we would post it and begin interviewing for that. Well, actually, January 10th would be my proposed effective date. To actually post an interview for that. We can post prior to that,
Okay, so that
begin
was,
interviewing and hire by January 10th.
that was the job description that you included, correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah, I included membership. We do have a lead, of course, the lead front desk or lead membership individual that already had that full-time position and a job description, but those 2 manager job descriptions are what's included in your packet.
I get,
The 2 jobs that were consolidated, that will be a salary of 48,000 plus benefits a year. What were the 2 salaries of the 2 positions?
Membership coordinator is at 40 that Melise holds right now, Melise Oakley holds, and then the youth coordinator position is 38,000.
So you're going from
38 to 48 for that one position. So I've got a
eliminating
savings,
the other position.
pardon,
The 2 position, you were combining 2 positions.
combining the 2
One was at 38,000 and one was at
was at 40.
40?
That's
So you had
correct.
a total of $78,000
Yes,
going to 2 different people.
That's
Now
correct.
you're going to consolidate it and the salary will be 48.
48, that's correct. With lead assistance with the 2 manager assistants. So we have a
You're looking at
savings.
Savings of 30,000 a year?
It's a savings of 30 minus 16,264 for the manager positions, which would be an additional position plus an increase for the membership manager. So it's a savings of 13,700, approximately 13,700.
I guess my concern, Chris, is, with no disrespect to Alexis at all, is the ability, time management and the ability to do both jobs effectively.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
that's my concern.
Yeah.
Because I know both the membership coordinator position and the programming and youth development position both require a lot of times throughout the different a lot of time throughout the different parts of the year.
Yeah,
Membership is pretty well
yeah. We're
all the
entering.
time.
Yeah, and what I can speak to on that is we're entering very busy time. Obviously, our peak season. We're affecting. We're seeing a transition with our software, which has taken up a great deal of staff time. Alexis has stepped in, as well as other managers have stepped in to affect that and to work as a team. In addition to that, the manager positions would make it efficient. And that's the critical thing. It's basically having that assistance there in consolidated positions. So it's where I see we're going, and it's effectively working in other departments as well.
Okay. Answered all my questions.
Do you want to vote on these as 3 separate items? Do you want to read them all as, anything's acceptable, I think, but just trying to decide what you prefer since you wanted them.
I think since we did pull them out, we probably ought to do them separately.
Okay.
Is that okay?
Mhm.
Make a motion to approve the consolidation of the program and youth development coordinator and the membership coordinator, and promote Alexis Williams to membership coordinator at a salary of 48,000 plus annually plus benefits.
I would second that.
Okay, any other discussion on that? What was item 4A6? Okay, roll call, please.
Commissioner Patton,
Yay.
Commissioner Barwick,
Yay.
Commissioner Webb,
Yay.
Commissioner Stecklin,
Yay.
Mayor Absher.
Yay.
Also like to Make the recommendation that we adopt and approve to create the membership manager position at a full-time non-exempt rate of 14 per hour and promote Ashley Palmer to membership manager.
Second that motion.
Okay, any other discussion on what would have been 4A7? Roll call, please.
Commissioner Patton,
Yay.
Commissioner Barwick,
Yay?
Commissioner Webb,
Yay.
Commissioner Stecklin,
Yay.
Mayor Absher.
Yay.
And finally, I would like to make a motion to create the youth development manager position at a part-time non-exempt rate of $14 per hour.
I'll second that motion.
Any further discussion on what would have been 4A8? Roll call, please.
Commissioner Patton,
Yay.
Commissioner Barwick,
Yay?
Commissioner Webb,
Yay.
Commissioner Stecklin,
Yay.
Mayor Absher.
Yay. All right, that brings us to item 7A on the agenda. Cody, you're up.
Thanks, Chris.
All right, so as had contacted each of you individually Saturday afternoon, we'd received 3 bids on the RFP that we put out for ambulance service within the city. That is coming due on January 9th at midnight. That's when the new contract would start. Of the 3 bids that we received, in the order that they were received was from United Medical Response, Abbott Ambulance, who's our current provider, and then the Williams County Ambulance Service. The 3 bids had quite a range. We asked potential bidders for basically what kind of, or the amount of public subsidy that they would need to operate within the city. And the range was from $0 over a 2-year contract period to a hair over $1.3 million over a 2-year period. There is one delta to consider in this, and it's kind of come up today as I've kind of worked through understanding these. In our current contract with Abbott, we have limits on what can be charged for basically 2 types of ambulance services. So there's ALS, which is advanced life support, and then there's BLS, which is basic life support. And you can use your imagination as far as what kind of each entail. Basic is not as hands-on as ALS is. And so just to try and get a better understanding based on what our current limits are versus what the industry standard is versus what insurance allows. Basically, our current contract says $1,000 for ALS service, $800 for BLS service. I asked the 2 lowest bidders if those rates stayed intact, what would their dollar figure be? And if we change those rates, because I'm not sure, blatantly, I'm not sure where those rates came from, and I'm not sure if that's kind of acceptable based on what insurance allows, both Medicare, Medicaid, private insurance, and so on. And so as far as what, the 2 low bidders were United, who bid $0, and the second lowest bid was Abbott Ambulance, who basically bid their current contract in the first year at $300,000 for the year, and then $315,000 for the second year. So again, with there being that much of a spread, I needed to understand why that was the case. So Abbott told me that they bid that amount, assuming those rates would remain in the contract. Those limits would remain in the contract. United said that obviously they weren't aware of those limits. They don't have a contract currently with the city, so I asked them for that amount as well. If we were to stay with those limits in the contract, there's about a $5,000 difference per month between the 2. United still remaining at $20,000 a month versus Abbott remaining at their $25,000 level per month. If we were to double those limits, you guys still with me? I'm sorry, I feel like I'm talking in circles here. If we were to double those limits to $2,000 for ALS and to $1,600 for BLS, Abbott would require $60,000 annually to continue their service with us at those new limits. United would uphold their $0 bid that they originally bid to us. So we've got a little bit of research to do there. I'm personally leaning towards doubling those limits. As I have done some research today, looked at some other contracts regionally, that seems to be more in line with what's acceptable. I even looked just throughout the state, and that seems to be more in line with what is kind of the industry standard. So with that being said, if we were to double those rates, we have a $0 bid for 2 years versus a $60,000 annual bid from Abbott Ambulance. So my recommendation, based on the dollar amount alone, would be for United Ambulance.
So is that in line with what insurance pays then? Curious.
Yeah, roughly. Obviously,
The double, I mean,
yeah, so insurance is going to allow for a little more than that, depending on what kind of insurance you have. Private insurance versus Medicaid or Medicare, they allow much lower amounts,
okay.
and they won't pay that level. But private insurance obviously is going to have a set fee schedule. And so I tried to look up today, and John was even working with me on this, trying to get what our current insurance, our current city insurance would pay, and we couldn't acquire that today in time for the meeting. So to answer your question, I'm not 100% sure, but they're going to allow less than that.
Response times on all of the bids were across the board same.
Response times as far as?
Well, like a couple of these bids included, we were talking about response times here.
Yeah, so we didn't necessarily put a limit as to what response time was.
It just talks about the standard being 8.
Yeah, industry across the board is 8 minutes. Since we've been under contract with Abbott, at least I can speak for the last 3 months, they've responded right around 6 minutes. They've increased or rather decreased their response times. We don't use United enough currently on the emergency end to dictate what their response times are. Both bidders agreed to direct dispatch directly to their units, which is something that our staff internally requires. Obviously, it makes things go a lot smoother. It makes response times a lot quicker if we can speak directly to the ambulances, let them know where they need to go. They can let us know when they're on scene, and that helps us gather that data.
Would United physically be located somewhere in town?
They do have a facility in town right now.
Okay.
I forget, is it Central Street? Yeah, Central Street, which is along the railroad tracks there, kind of behind Claire de Ziegler's office, back that way.
Would we contact them directly with 911?
Correct, yeah, yeah,
And were
either
you
or.
able to determine any other municipalities, did they have limits on their,
Locally, Carbondale and Heron do not.
Cody, and I don't know if you know this or not, but as far as the staff of each of these, comparing one to the other, are we looking EMT? I'm sorry if I.
Everyone will have the proper
Paramedic.
certification.
So, okay.
Yeah.
So there's no difference in levels of.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
Same number of ambulances and.
Yeah. Abbott is a larger company. They have more of a nationwide presence, and so that's a consideration as well. United is a local company, originated out of Marion County, and so they're nowhere near as big as what Abbott is. And like I said, Abbott's our current contractor as well. We made some recommendations to them back in September, and I think the next week even they adopted those recommendations and have provided an excellent level of service since then.
Do all these companies offer? Obviously, if one company that we're contracted with is full, it rolls to the next.
Correct.
And is
Correct.
everybody still agreeing that they will still do
Correct.
that, even
Yeah.
if there's a switch made? Okay.
And I believe there's representatives here from those two lower bids. If anyone has any questions for them directly, I'm sure they would entertain questions.
Anybody have any questions?
got mine answered.
So what's your pleasure then?
I guess we need to make two decisions. One, if we want to raise the limit allowed on the ALS and the BLS.
That doesn't need to be voted on, we just need to well, I guess, I'd say it doesn't need to be voted on, we don't have an item on the agenda that speaks to that, however you want to handle that.
Maybe we've inadvertently cost ourselves money by subsidizing, if you will, the cost of these ambulance visits over time. As long as I could go back on previous contracts, these limits were that way. I just think they just didn't get updated as time has gone by, and that's ultimately cost us some money. But at least Carbondale and Heron, our nearest peers, don't seem to have that mechanism in their contracts at all. In other words, they're not in the business of subsidizing the ambulance call.
Mhm.
And I question whether we should be in that business at all, one way or the other. I mean,
They have exclusivity with one company.
Do you need to talk?
They don't subsidize it.
Hey, Mr. Mayor.
yes, sir.
So if you guys were looking at, like I talked with Cody before, if you guys were looking at just eliminating the regulation, regulation on there, our bid does become zero.
What was it at double then?
So
If we double those rates? Pardon?
60,000. And so part of that is because the rates on there, you have capped mileage and there's no ancillary cost. So when we do a whole bunch of procedures for a certain patient, those things don't get charged out individually. This also doesn't apply to Medicare and Medicaid patients because they're already a set rate. So it's only a percentage of the trips that we do where this regulation becomes even an issue.
I guess my fear is if we take the cap off totally, I mean, no offense to your company, but you were originally at $600,000 for 2 years. So if we take the caps off, are the rates just gonna be jacked so high? I mean, that 600,000,
Somebody.
I agree with what the mayor said, though. I don't know that we wanna be in the business of finance. But on the other hand, I don't know whether just take the lock completely off the door, charge what you wanna charge. I don't know about that either.
Well, I would say that would only apply to somebody that's not covered under Medicare, Medicaid, or private insurance, correct? Am I right in saying that?
Medicare and Medicaid.
Just Medicare, Medicaid? Okay. So those are capped,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
Private insurance is not?
No.
Okay.
Do you have limits from most insurance companies on what you can charge?
So we have a usual and customary rate, which we bill to them. So, I mean, if there can be agreements between insurance companies, but there isn't always, and a lot of ambulance companies are not in network with, because of the type of service we provide. We can't turn anybody away based on their insurance. We just go and pick them up. So there are a lot of people that are not covered, are not gonna pay either. So there's, risk on both ends.
Is the usual and customary price, right now we have this limit at $1,000. That's for an ALS call. Is
Right.
every ALS call, if it's within the city, is it billed at $1,000?
Every call, no.
Every ALS call?
Yeah, currently, everyone that 911 call that comes into us is billed based off of that structure, yes.
Okay. So if that structure were not in place, what would the customary fee be?
So I would have to double check, but I believe it's 1,900 somewhere for ALS emergency, and I think we're around 12 or 1,300 for BLS emergency.
Okay.
But we could supply those rates to you. I could get those, like, actual documented rates to you.
And it's important to know There's more than one ALS level. There's
Yeah.
ALS emergency, ALS 1, ALS 2, and those,
Okay.
each one of those levels have a different fee, basically.
How many runs do you do in a year's time on average? I'm just curious.
Well, we haven't been here a full year yet,
Okay.
but I think we're around
206 a month.
Yeah.
206 a month.
Well, Cody, you've researched this more than anybody here, so, I mean, in this recommendation, obviously, we lean toward United because it was a 0 to the city. But now Abbott's saying that certain ways they could be a 0 if we lift the caps. So what's then, would that change the recommendation then?
I mean, at that point, all things are equal, so I don't know that there would be a recommendation.
Okay.
One thing about it, we are still at, I'm Jared Hunter, CFO, 911 Response. Our bid is still at 0 with a cap in place. It's just raising the cap to, and actually our current billing amounts are less than the cap amount. You know, our mileage rate's actually at 1750, which would remain the same, which is actually less than what Abbott's mileage rate is currently. So we would have a cap in place with a 0 bid to where, and would only charge our usual customary rates that are below that cap and would stay at that cap or below. We have no intention right now of getting more into what the cap is at, so. And we also do a proactive, program to work with patients on their ability to pay sometimes. So if
we do as
necessary.
well, and that's in our bid.
You guys may have to arm wrestle for this.
Well, I would say that we're the only bidder that actually qualifies for what you guys asked for, which is a company that's provided ALS service for 2 years continuously, and our financial backing is sound.
What did you just say? Their bid is 0 with the cap in place?
Not the current caps, if we were to increase the caps.
Yeah, if they were double, if you did the double, but it still kept you capped. There would still be action under that cap as well.
It wouldn't be increasing mileage at all. It'd actually be lower than what it is now for you guys.
Well, if it's fair
So
to ask.
if we doubled our cap to 2,000, you would still be at 0.
It would still be a 0 bid with a cap in place, and some of our rates are less than what your cap amount would be.
And if we double the cap to 2,000, you would be at 60,000 a year.
That's correct.
I was just curious, if you lose out, do you leave town then, or you stay in, or is I guess the economics will show? Or-
But economics would show,
Yeah.
I would assume.
What's the answer?
Economics would show. I don't know the answer to that.
Need to make a decision. I understand what you're saying as far as if you just lift the caps all together. I don't know if that's the right.
Well, if we lift the caps all together, we're gonna be at 0 with them. If we double the cap and limit it at 2,000, we're still gonna be at 0 if we go with them. So in my mind, at least we've got a cap in place where, it can't go completely off the chart, and it's still not gonna cost us any more money because it's gonna be at 0.
Other thoughts? Doug?
Lot to digest.
I'm still trying to wrap my head around the whole city's responsibility, I guess, is my question. Obviously, if the patient's Medicare or Medicaid, we don't see a bill, correct? That would be,
With the 0 bid, Councilman, that we would not, the city would not see a bill at all from us for a standby or anything else. There would not be bills for submitting to the city, so.
okay.
Maybe you guys can answer this. Customarily, what is the percentage of Medicare and Medicaid calls? So you have
Off the top of my head, I'm not 100%, but it's greater than 50%.
Customarily, Medicare and Medicaid patients makes up at least 80% of the billed patients. And so those patients, the rates are all set by federal and state law. And so those rates, there is a Medicare allowable charge. On an ALS emergency run is approximately $420. That is the allowable charge that is reduced down to on a Medicare run. Medicaid run is actually less than that. So the patient at most will ever see on a Medicare bill 20% of the allowable charge, unless they've not met their couple $100 deductible on Medicare for the year, then it can be slightly larger. Medicaid patient never does see a bill, and if they're Medicare with Medicaid, the patient does not see the bill because the Medicaid takes care of wiping out the secondary charges of the copay. Either it pays a small amount or it pays nothing but wipes the bill out.
Yeah, I would say that 80% might be a little bit high from the 911 side, but for the transfer side, for sure it is.
So we're
So-
talking 40 patients out of the 200 that are picked up a month.
Mm-hmm.
And so how many other cities are you in as far as agreements with you guys?
We are the 911 provider in Salem. We have a location in Salem, in Centralia, in Marion, and in Heron.
Okay.
So we're prepped and ready to go, so.
We do have a contract with Inherent, that's our contracted duty over there. Those are the only two contracts we currently hold, are Heron and the 911 contract in Salem.
So your ambulances here wouldn't be going to Heron then?
No,
Okay.
No, the two that are here are here.
we will have at least four trucks here in Winston County. They'll all be purchased new recently, or will be purchased. We have enough trucks to operate with now. We have the staffing we're going to be needing, and we have we'll be ready to go. So
One of the things to also consider is one of the things you don't necessarily see in the areas around this part of the city. We do typically see in larger regions. We do utilize non-transport vehicles as well. I know one of the worries previously had been long ETAs. Obviously, that was corrected. During high call volumes, those are things that we can't necessarily account for in certain times. In order to help get the care to the patients without burdening the EMS system on the ambulance side, though, is we do offer these non-transport vehicles, what we call QRVs. We do operate two of them up in Salem. If awarded the contract, we would actually be utilizing two of those within Williamson County as well. One of them would be Mike's vehicle, and one would also be Derek's vehicle. Mike would be, he's actually currently the captain in Marion. Derek is the captain in Heron. So on their off times, they would be actually utilizing these non-transport vehicles in the case that there's a high call volume, even if you have to, in the rare instance, would have to call mutual aid. They can at least render care at the same level as an ambulance with just the inability to transport. And there's no extra cost to the patient for providing that service.
So your ambulances would be dedicated just to Marion, or would you still take calls out in the county or the interstate or something?
The ambulances that would be dedicated to 911 would be here in Marion, they would not be in the city.
Okay.
Not unless they were requested through the PSAP system for mutual aid to another jurisdiction via 911.
and by staffing an ambulance in Heron, also we have majority of the time an additional mutual aid unit available that's only a few miles away for quick response if necessary as well. So there's added benefit there of the close coverage from our additional units, which can be back up.
As well as that too, we do have plans to immediately purchase more ambulances, obviously, as indicated. Those would be stationed out here in the event that more would be needed. We do have the ability to quickly transfer units around in the event like RMCI, Scottish incident, or something of the like.
Were you guys able to look at the proposals?
They will get a synopsis from myself.
Okay, so there was a mass casualty incident not too terribly long ago, where we were able to send 3 rigs from down here. It was over at the prison. We sent 3 rigs from here. We grabbed 2 from Franklin County, brought them down. We even started one from Effingham to come down to cover 911. We ended up transporting, Jeff, 15 patients?
17 total.
17 total. I mean, you guys get that benefit from us as well. We also have an agreement with Deaconess EMS, who just took over Harrisburg as their primary, where they would come over, if we get to status zero, we would notify DJ's not there anymore. We would notify Marion PD, they would come over and cover. So it would give you that extra layer of security on making sure that there's adequate coverage. There's been numerous times where we staff over, and we're running 3 911 calls at a time. I think there's been a few times where it's been 4, but we're able to cover those things generally.
Brian, can you address, and then again, this synopsis-wise, so I can't speak to any details, but it looks to me, at least from the synopsis, that your company wasn't quite meeting expectations until we put out a cancellation of contract notice, and then the services picked way up.
So
Can you address that a little bit?
material, or basically what we changed in that we had a meeting right over there. We were talking about the challenges that were occurring. The way that they were getting the calls were being transferred and going through our dispatch was causing a delay. And so we went to a direct dispatch, and it eliminated it immediately.
Okay.
And I think our crews have been much happier about the situation, and Marion PD is much happier about the situation.
Was anything communicated to you from March to September about that problem? Or was that the first time that was?
Having monthly meetings, is that right, or weekly?
We were having monthly meetings, and there was one or two issues that we addressed during those calls,
Okay.
but it wasn't ringing an alarm bell.
Okay.
But as soon as we got to the direct dispatch, everything resolved.
This is a little bit irrelevant, but I was just curious, if you pick up a Marion patient and they want to go to a hospital out of town, do you go ahead and take them to their request, or you have to take them to Marion?
No, we take them to their request,
Okay.
Within reason.
Okay.
You know, if they want to go to St. Louis.
Depends on the condition they're in, I guess.
Right, sure.
If they don't request, where do you take them?
What's that?
If they don't request, where do you take them?
The closest appropriate. So it would depend on the patient's condition at that point. Likely it would be Heartland, though.
I would ask the council to consider the fact that the reason why the city has the option of other cost savings is because of us coming to town. And the reason, and a lot of the reasons that instigated the improvement of Abbott is the fact that we came to town. And caused that competition factor, so.
Well, I think that's actually irrelevant, because it's the caps, as you guys said, even was gonna cost you guys more. So that's where the savings is, adjusting the caps.
We need to make a decision.
Well, of my opinion, I really don't feel comfortable with giving up at least some type of a cap. And maybe in the future, we see that it's not needed, but to go from $1,000 cap to no cap, we can do that by doubling it, go to 2,000, and still have zero expense. Or we could give up the cap and have zero expense. So in my mind, we get to keep a little bit and still have zero expense. So my thoughts would be going towards.
With respect, we were asked about this afternoon, about that, and so we did put together a price quickly. I would, if we are looking at this and it's gonna alter the way that you look at the contract, I would request another week before you guys make a decision on this, so that I can go back to my finance people and to go through everything.
Are we under any time constraint?
January 9th.
January 9th, okay. Okay.
I've got employees that have been employed in Marion City for 20 years. They are dedicated to this city, and they deserve that chance.
Gentlemen, we would also be, to fill in some additional positions, be offering applications for employment. So there's a good chance that many of the people who are with Abbott presently will have a chance to become employed with us. So it's not our intention to leave anyone hanging out there or anything else.
In all fairness, though, if we give you an extra week, I mean, and you know what their bid is, aren't you just gonna come back with that same bid and we're gonna be in the same spot, potentially? You're gonna say, okay, I'll do it for 0. Because if you didn't, anything up more than 0, you're gonna be higher. So that's what I presume you're gonna come back with, which is not a very transparent bid process at that point. And then what? Then do we arm wrestle for it or what? What does the extra week give you? It's either 0 or it's not. Right?
No, I understand. It's not solely my decision. It's not solely my decision.
To kind of go with that, I will say that I understand his predicament, that it isn't his sole decision. One of the nice things that you do get with a small business is this is our decision. We were presented the same thing today. We were able to, within about 2 hours' time, come up with the proposed amendment to what was offered, and present it to you in a timely manner today, accurately. Issues would also be addressed at that same level. You guys have our cell phones at this time.
The entire management of the company is less than an hour away, if need be.
Brian, did you come back with a proposed number after that question was posed this afternoon as
I
far as
did.
the doubling of the limit?
I did.
Did you run that by anybody, or is that firm, or is it?
Yes, that,
So what changes from this point? With more time, another week?
well, I'm not sure. I think that we would definitely go back and try and figure out how to get to 0. I don't know if we can, but
With the same person that you asked today? That came up with 60?
yes.
Well, what changes, other than the fact somebody bid lower? You had that chance today, right? To get to 0 or 15 or -20 or whatever the number was. I'm just asking, not trying to be a smart aleck, I'm saying what changes? If you asked that person today and they said 60, what changes getting another week other than the fact that you know a competitor bid 0?
I didn't believe that this bid was gonna be based solely for sure and on dollar amount. But honestly, I don't know what does change. I would have to check, is what I'm saying.
Okay, would you guys sit down for a minute and let us talk about this, please, and we'll quit debating this back and forth? What's your opinion? You've been immersed in this more than the rest of us, so.
I agree with Commissioner Barwick that we need some caps in place for those 40 people a month, basically, that either operate under private insurance, are uninsured, or are non-insured. And so with that cap in place, assuming it's doubled at the rates that we've talked about this evening, an opportunity to save the taxpayers even $60,000 is a win. So I assume that would be my recommendation.
And what are we currently paying? Is it around 300,000?
$25,000 a month, yes, 300,000 a year.
If I understand that right, then we're currently paying Abbott $300,000 a year currently.
Correct.
They're willing right now, I know, to go to 60.
Right.
From 300.
If we double the caps.
If we increase the caps.
Increase caps, okay. And possibly 0.
If we
Possibly.
eliminate the cap, well, yeah,
No,
possibly.
possibly 0.
No, wait a minute. Only possibly 0 because somebody else has bid 0.
Exactly, I know that.
In all fairness, I don't mean that
Get that.
any other way, but that's what's going on here. It was 60, that was the answer.
0.
It's not 0.
It was 300.
Correct.
Am I wrong? It was 300.
No, you're right.
Is 300.
But that's what I'm saying, is that Cody, we posed the question today, trying to figure out if there's another option. What if these limits caps, better words than limit, were doubled. That's just a number that we threw out there, was doubled. The answer came back as 60. Their answer said it's still 0. So that's the problem I'm having, is that, and I will say, as far as Abbott and we did have some issues, and you guys have performed very strongly since the meeting that we had. Matter of fact, without complaint from me. I think you've done, so it's not about that whatsoever. I think you guys have done a stellar job now that we've had direct dispatch and all of that. But still, I'm just having a problem tracking with you is what changes if you go back to the same guy you went to today that gave you an answer of 60, what changes when you go back to this same guy? What's even the different question? Except United bid 0, now what will we do? That's not fair. Do you see that any other way? Am I wrong?
I understand your position. I do understand your position.
Okay. Thank you. So that's where we're at.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I see pluses and minuses with each, you know. I recognize the ability on a smaller scale to pick up a phone and talk to decision maker. I mean, that's something that my company's done for years, and that's part of our mantra is that, you know, we don't have the layer, you know. But subsequently, on the other hand, a national big company's, you know, when you look at resources and things like that, probably has a deeper resource base than a smaller firm. Now, that's not saying one's better than the other. I'm just saying, you know, in the case of a mass thing, you know, what happens when there's 15 ambulances needed? So let's say you have, God forbid, 2 school buses head on 57 right outside here, and we've got 120 kids now injured. What, you know, is there any difference in calling from an Abbott standpoint where they can pick up the phone and go, we need Evansville, St. Louis, da-da-da-da-da-da-da? What do we do there?
We do have mutual aid in place. Obviously, we have internal mutual aid with our Harris and Winston trade locations, as well as we can easily staff up. We actually have a lot of calling crews available as well on a daily basis. But we do have already standing mutual aid contracts in place. Currently working with one through West Frankfort. We have one being put in place through Cargill. We have Lake of Egypt as well. We've got a couple more that I believe that are also coming. Refresh my memory. Is that Warville's one? We have several in place with the surrounding fire districts that would also be able to provide ambulances at a moment's notice, as well as we do have mutual aid contracts in our northern region as well.
To your point, though, when there was a tornado in Franklin County, we were able to move trucks from our Belleville base and down from our Effingham base to help watch the county as our county crews were engaged in helping with the tornado.
I mean, I know it's worst case scenario. And
It is absolutely worst
Hopefully
case
never
scenario,
happen,
but we
but-
do have that flexibility.
I would hope
and the
if it
worst
were a
case
worst
can
case
happen.
scenario that everybody in the area would jump in.
well, I would think so. I would think so, no matter who. Yeah.
If we were presented with this opportunity, I mean, it would be at our max right now. We would have 13 ambulances available at any moment's notice. You know, we can manipulate and move where it would be whatever we needed.
And I guess the other question, if you weren't awarded the contract, would you mutually aid Abbott that has the contract?
We actually have to
take it out of
specific.
anybody just because we're.
Okay,
It's not the residents' fault.
yeah,
I mean,
okay.
That's
I would hope that's everybody's,
actual stance.
that's
But yeah,
everybody's
I
reaction.
It can be our closest competitor. We don't care. It's still
Gotcha.
the citizens.
Good too.
Okay, let me see if I can summarize this so we can see what you want to do. Anybody? If I'm right, don't say anything. If I'm wrong, you guys raise your hand, because I may not be right with this. Here's where we're at. This is a little bit of my opinion, but I think both of these companies are very reputable. United is newer than Abbott, no question about it. For your information, we did ask for financials. I've reviewed those financials confidentially. You've not been provided because they were asked to be very confidential. Steve Hale, who's not here tonight, I also asked to review those. He's the treasurer. For whatever it's worth, pretty dang impressive, if I say so myself, for a startup company to be where they're at this point. Every startup company should be as fortunate as they are, or should wish to be that fortunate. I don't have any qualms with that. but they are a newer company. But as far as the bid per se, and granted it changed a little bit because of this limit thing, when we realized these limits are archaic throwbacks to a very, very old contract and simply haven't been updated. When we asked what would happen if they were doubled. Didn't have to be that number. We could have said, what if they were 300%? I don't know, but that's what it was. That was what was thrown out there. Then it changed being, it's still zero or it's 60 grand. And what it boils down to is you've got to decide the newness of this company, the steadiness of this company versus a $60,000 delta. And I realize what you're saying, give me another chance or whatever, but it's still not, I assume you're not going to pay us to have ambulances here. So it's not going to get cheaper than zero.
No, and I
just,
wouldn't-
I think it's unfair. The only reason you're asking for that is because they're bidding zero. If they were
Well,
bidding 60, you wouldn't be asking for
Our
nothing.
original bid did say that if we were going, if there was not a cap, that we would be at zero and we would work towards that. And so one thing that you guys don't have right now is what our current pricing structure is, or what we would be presenting to you as current pricing structure. I mean, you guys don't have those prices. And so I know you're worried about that cap and having that security, but our BLS rate is substantially cheaper than what you guys suggested. So I think you guys don't have all the facts on whether or not that cap should be double or if it should be, the BLS cap definitely doesn't need to be that high from what we're looking at, but you don't have all the facts as to apples to apples on what that would look like for you guys to be at zero from our bid. I'm asking for the opportunity to give you guys our rate sheet so that you guys can look at it, see if it's acceptable to you guys, and if it falls into that, where we do become zero.
I believe you do have our fiction. You guys want to do that?
We very well may be wrong. We very well may not have the facts. It still doesn't seem quite fair to me. That's my opinion. But
I agree.
whatever you know. Yeah.
It's important to note as
Yeah.
well that
Yeah.
in our current contract and in any new contract that is signed, we'll have a 120-day out clause without cause in any contract. So if at any point, whatever company that is chosen is not meeting our expectations, we have the ability to remove ourselves from that contract.
But we'd be presumptively at the mercy of whoever else is left.
That's correct.
I mean, if we're gonna be
Right.
fair about it. So there's our choices. Choose United, choose Abbott, wait. Somebody's gotta make a motion on something.
Just so you're thinking about it, there would have to be a special meeting in order to do this again, because we have to have something in place by January 9th. Our next meeting, I believe, is the 13th, which would be the following Monday after that.
I would make a motion that we would accept the bid from United with the understanding that our ALS would go to 2,000 and our BLS would go to 1,600.
Anybody care to second it?
I'll second that one.
Okay. Have we beat it to death sufficiently before we vote? Anybody wanna talk about it more?
No, I was reviewing the email that Cody sent out Saturday and trying to really make heads or tails of it. So if it appears that I was on my phone, I wasn't on Facebook, I was reading the memo. So
Same
that
here.
that being
It looks
said-
bad, we're going.
Yeah, yeah. I wasn't scrolling. I was actually reading this. I agree with you, Mayor, in that the opportunity was presented to both companies, the same opportunity, and I don't know that we would be here if. I think it's only fair that we stop the process tonight and make a decision in all fairness to respect, or with respect to the low bidder, that's kind of the way the game's played, I guess, if you will. And it seems only fair that way. I certainly understand your position, but I also understand their position, so I'm good with the motion and the vote.
Anybody else have any comments? Roll call, please.
Commissioner Patton,
Yay.
Commissioner Barwick,
Yay.
Commissioner Webb,
Yay.
Commissioner Steckland,
Yay.
Mayor Absher.
Yay. All right, we'll move to commissioner reports. And we will start with Commissioner Webb this time, because I never can remember who we started with last time.
Yeah, street department, last 30 days, we've received several reports through our city app, just kind of throwing that out there. If anybody has any issues, they can use our city app, but we've taken up a lot of drainage issues, potholes, traffic lights, so on and so forth. So some of those take a little while to work on and to complete, so be patient with us on that. But a great job by both the street department and the cemetery department throughout this past year, so I appreciate all their efforts. Thank you.
Mr. Steckland.
Water treatment plant, we had one new service, one renewal, 75 meters changed, 2 main breaks, termination of an old 4-inch main, and 189 Julie locations, so it's a very busy time. Great work by those departments. Crews are still working on Stockton and North Market, installing the new sewer lines. Remember to drive slow around those construction zones. Also, this is not really my department, but as the unofficial, I think you coined the Commissioner of Entertainment.
Yes.
Okay. We'll update on the Christmas on the Square. Anybody attended that? Hopefully you did. I think it was a great first year. I got, and I think you all got the same thing. Great comments. Already got some, hopefully next year will be bigger and better. And got some great ideas and great feedback on some of the issues that we encountered this year, obviously. And we had some wait times, obviously, with the carriage rides were absolutely phenomenally popular. And Josh has already come up with a system for next year, should we decide to repeat that, to kind of mimic the Disney Fast Pass type thing, where you don't have to stand in that line for an hour and a half. You'll get a text message when it's your turn to go, so it'll be pretty cool. So we just could, better weather maybe would be nice for Sunday, but it did feel like
Well, let's talk
winter.
about that real quick. What would you guys think about moving it forward a little bit? You've only got so many weekends between Thanksgiving and Christmas. I mean, it's finite, but,
And I think this year was a bad year because the time frame between Thanksgiving and Christmas, correct?
well, it was a
Was it a week?
week,
little short.
getting shorter.
Yeah,
Is that what it was?
A little shorter, yeah.
yeah.
Well, I'm
I-
decide, but I would like to move it up a little bit.
I'd love to see us move it forward, earlier.
Yeah.
I mentioned to Cody, I said, I think it'd be cool to kick off the season
Yeah.
the weekend after Thanksgiving. And then you could
You know when
light the
Thanksgiving
square,
is
you could do it all.
next week or next year?
Thursday.
Yeah. It sounds absurd, but we really have to be deciding this pretty soon.
Oh, yeah,
26.
Okay, so
be the 28th and 29th,
Mm-hmm.
which is almost December.
That might work good, people coming in, families,
Families
a
are
long
here for
weekend.
Thanksgiving, for the weekend, yeah.
okay. All right, I'm sorry.
I'm not
interrupt you
trying to
there,
say
but
that's what we need to do, but I think that would be, plus, from my knowledge, I don't think we're bumping up against any other cities. Not that it matters. Again, we talked about this, we were worried, if we move it up a week, we bump up against the Carbondale thing and this and that, but
We should hope for nothing at the Civic Center that weekend as well.
true.
I didn't hear what you
I
said.
said we should hope for nothing at the Civic Center that weekend as well.
Hope for nothing? Okay.
Well, I think we could put something in there that associates to the
Yeah, maybe.
Christmas Square. Show the movie there or something like that.
That probably worked pretty well when the Civic Center would empty up, all those people coming out on the square.
Oh, it did.
Okay. Is that
That's it. That's all I got.
The only thing I've got, just want to remind everyone through the holidays to be cautious in driving, drinking. There's going to be extra patrols out there, and this is, people like to party through New Year's. We won't be back in session till after the first of the year, so everyone just be careful and try to have a designated driver.
Mr. Pat?
Excuse me, the treasurer's office recently got some updated software. We are implementing that. It appears to be everything that we expected it to be. Should help us a bunch in next year's budgeting, so we're excited about that, see how that's gonna work out between now and the fiscal year end. So that's all I've got today.
Hey, one other thing about Christmas on the Square. I want to commend all of our departments. They were absolutely phenomenal, from the street department, across the board.
Fire department, I mean.
Fire department, all of them
anything
were
that came up,
fantastic.
Everybody sprang to action just on the
Yep.
drop of a hat. It's pretty
Yep.
incredible, really.
Yep.
But, yeah, that's a good point. A lot of hard work, but it was fun. But,
I got, hearing you sing was the
thank you.
highlight of my weekend.
Next year it's trumpet. I do want to have a small executive session for litigation and property. I do want to go into, so before we make a motion to enter into closed session, is there anything else to come under miscellaneous before the council? Okay, as I will routinely tell those of you in the audience, we will have a motion here to go into executive session. When we come out, we will be making no decisions. Nothing else will be decided on the agenda or announced. So it's up to you whether you want to sit in here on Christmas Eve, but you're welcome to do so. But hopefully in 15 or 20 minutes, we'll just close out and go home anyway. So with that, I would make a motion that we enter into executive and closed session for the purpose of discussing property and litigation.
Second,
Second.
third, fourth.
Okay, roll call, please.
Commissioner Patton?
Yay.
Commissioner Barwick?
Yay.
Commissioner Webb?
Yay.
Commissioner Steckland?
Yay.
Mayor Absher?
Yay.